So you guys are here to learn how to prove the value of your content marketing. We realize that we probably have a lot of techie people here, hopefully. So for the people that realize that Star Wars is better than Star Trek and things like that, we're really going to talk to you how to unleash the full force of your data on your content marketing strategy. So I wanted to see who we have in the room. So on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being C-3PO, again, and then 1 being Jar Jar Binks, where would you guys say you're at from a tech-savvy standpoint with your marketing technology at wherever you work? So,
fingers.
Do fingers 4, 5? Do we have any Jar Jars? Don't be ashamed. Okay, cool. So it is really good to kind of understand where different people are. We are going to try to basically set some of the building blocks of how we set up our attribution models, and kind of the different ways. We didn't start with multi-touch attribution and complex models. We started a lot easier just with measuring engagement. But that's kind of what we're going to talk about.
Mm-hmm. And really this session today, hopefully, if these are some of the things you can look to get out of it, if you have struggled with any of these different types of things, maybe struggling to prove the value of your content marketing program, something probably all of us have struggled with at one point or another, struggled to quantify the impact that your content is actually having on pipeline and on closed deals, having to fight tooth and nail to get budget for content marketing or for new technology. Or maybe you've been asked, could you just focus a little bit more on the real marketing, aka the product marketing, instead of doing all that content marketing stuff? We've experienced all of these at one point or another, and probably a lot of you have here as well. So that's what we're going to try to cover, some of those problems today. And I know for me, it's been exciting to see this is a very tech-savvy group of people in general at this conference, which makes sense because it's content tech. And so in a lot of instances, when we start talking about multi-touch attribution, we just get glazed over looks, but I don't think that's going to be the case here. But we will, Sean will dive into some of the more technical, complex data stuff, and then I'm the content person, and so I'll try to translate what that means from a content strategy perspective. So hopefully we'll hit both sides of the audience there.
And if none of those are interesting, you can probably jump out now to catch a different session.
We won't be offended.
That's fine.
A little bit more about us before we jump in. So Frontline Education, as we mentioned, is where we both are currently working. It's a B2B software company in the K-12 education space. So we provide school administration software for school district administrators. And it's been a little bit of a wild ride at Frontline. I've been there almost 10 years and started at about 70 employees when I joined the team, and now we're at 650, and most of that growth has happened in the last 3 or 4 years. So it's been a lot of rapid growth. We were acquired by a private equity firm and then acquired again by a second private equity firm, at which time we were valued at over $1 billion, hence the unicorn status. And as you could imagine, lots of change, lots of growth, increasing pressure that comes along with that. We've also been putting a lot of investment into our content marketing strategy for a number of years, and we're really honored, as Lisa mentioned, to receive the Content Marketing Award for Project of the Year for our content strategy in 2017, which was just a credit to the work that so many people on the team are doing. So lots of change, lots of things going on, and along with all of that, we have continued to try to maintain our focus and our investment in content marketing, but have struggled to say, how do we really show at the end of the day the impact in dollars that content marketing is having on the business? So before we can jump into the tracking of multi-touch and how we see and prove what we're doing is working, first I wanted to take a couple minutes to talk about the strategy behind it and how we think about content at Frontline. We operate with really a fundamental belief in mind that a successful content strategy must focus first and foremost on engagement. And whether we've articulated it that way along the way, that's really been our operating principle for a while as a content team, and that's probably not groundbreaking for anybody in this room. Engagement is at the center of what all of us do as content marketers. But one of the reasons why I think it's important to sit on it for a second and talk about it is because the sales funnel so often also comes into the story and the conversation, especially when we're talking to executive leadership or to sales, and the focus is lasered in on this funnel. And this is a model that I found out there that is suggesting we need to align our different types of content to these different stages of the funnel. So for example, this model is suggesting that your thought leadership, your best practices, white papers, ebooks, all of that belongs at the top of the funnel. And then as you move into the middle of the funnel, they're suggesting, well, now you should be using maybe quizzes and webinars. And at the bottom of the funnel, that's where we're going to put in case studies and FAQs. And that's one way to think about it, and it's okay, but I have a little bit of an issue of thinking about content marketing solely in terms of the funnel, because that is not about our audience. That's about us. That's about what we want them to do, moving them through our purchasing process. And as we all know, the purchasing process isn't even really this linear most of the time anyway. I'm starting to see a lot of good stuff out there now around let's change our thinking to move away from this idea of funnel and realize that audience engagement is continuous and it's interactive and it's not this nice, neat little funnel that we want them to move through. So there's really a distinct difference, I believe, between what your audience wants from you and what you and your sales force want. And so when we're thinking only about the sales funnel when it comes to content strategy, we're really not being reactive to what the audience wants to see from us. And so we like to think about it a little bit differently.
So, and as you talk about, you're a marketer and you're dealing with, your sales team, and they want you to just get more leads, get more revenue coming in the door. But you say, hey, thought leadership is really important, and these content types are really important. They drive engagement, and I feel like they do drive people through the funnel. But having a proper attribution model can give you the tools and the credit and the proof you need to go to your sales team and your sales leadership and your marketing leadership to say, hey, these are important content types, and they're driving real revenue. Mm-hmm. So when we think about the sales funnel, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Mm-hmm. It's just not, encapsulates content marketing, right? It's good, it's linear, but when you, like Ali said, it's just not the full picture. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it too linearly, it can almost have a negative effect on what you're trying to approve and achieve and measure.
Mm-hmm. I think one way to put this kind of into stark reality is when you think about the types of requests that are coming in from your sales team. And if they're anything like our sales team, it's not usually, hey, could I please have another amazing piece of thought leadership that will elevate my credibility in the marketplace as a partner? Is anyone getting those kind of requests? Okay, so most often it's, hey, could I have another PowerPoint deck, another product flyer, some more stuff on feature function, and that has its place, and as Sean mentioned, the funnel's not bad, we still have to support that, it's an important part of the business, but it's not the essence of content marketing. And a lot of what we used to do as a team was primarily responding to those requests coming in from the sales team, and that's what drove pretty much all of our content. And then once we started growing our own content marketing model, shifted our focus to engagement on the audience, and have seen really positive results from that, but we still have to answer those questions from the sales team and from sales leadership. Why are you doing so much thought leadership? Why aren't you just cranking out these things that we're looking for? And that's one of the reasons that multi-touch has been so powerful for us, because it helps us show the why and the value behind what we're doing.
So again, the funnel isn't bad. We're not dissing the funnel, but as we talk about, segmenting how we attribute and segment our attribution, we don't group it by the funnel, we group it by audience needs.
Mm-hmm. So I'll talk about those audience needs really briefly here and just a little bit more on the strategy, and then we'll move into all of the awesomeness that is multi-touch attribution. So this is how we ended up defining and mapping out our content strategy, is all around this idea of audience needs, and we talk about it till we're blue in the face and everyone's getting really tired of hearing about audience needs, but we just are going to keep talking about it because that's what we want to be central to our content strategy. And we identified and aligned ours to these 5 different needs for content that we think our personas have, the persona being at the center there, not us. And best practices would be what you would think of as thought leadership, content that's going to help them be better at their job. So we do lots of white papers and ebooks and webinars and those sorts of things there. Enjoyment would be content that's primarily designed just to provide a great experience with our brands, things that are more lighthearted and fun. Information is where we start to move into some of the more product-focused content. So we focus that around exposing and validating problems that the market has. We do a lot of email campaigns, landing pages that would fit in that bucket. Answers is content now that's a little bit more specifically about they have an identified need and we want to help them understand that we are the best partner to meet that need. So FAQs, case studies, those sorts of things. And then lastly, help would be content to help them get better at leveraging the solutions they already have from us. We have a lot of the education base is already using at least one solution from us. So we're often hitting multiple of these needs at the same time. Somebody might be an existing customer and they need help from one product area, but they're ready to get information in another one, or maybe we're just starting to warm them up and nurture them with best practices in another area. So we try to focus in on not the timeline and not the purchasing process when it comes to the content strategy, but getting the right piece of information to the right person at the right time.
So again, it's as the persona and the person should be at the center of your content strategy, the person and the persona should be at the center of your attribution strategy as well.
So I want to share one really quick example of a piece of content, and this one will come up later because Sean's going to show how we actually tracked through multi-touch attribution the performance of this. But one of the things we started talking about as a content team was where we could build up a new audience. We already had a pretty big audience and good engagement in email and on our blog, and we started looking around and did some research, and Brian, a member of my team, suggested that moving into podcasts was a good new opportunity for us. And we decided to be very intentional about this one, and the audience needs were only going to be best practices and enjoyment. So we are not going to talk about product, we're not going to push product, we don't do case studies. It's all about that high-level thought leadership. And from an engagement perspective, it's been very successful. We're seeing steady growth, 32% increase in engagement in the first year, which is all really positive, but then it leads to that bigger question, well, so what? What's the value of engagement? What is the actual hard dollar benefit to the company of having those engagement statistics? And that's where multi-touch starts to come in.
Cool. So we can see there's engagement, we can see things are working, but how do we prove that value? Because at Frontline, we're measured off of how much revenue are we generating, how much revenue are we contributing, how much revenue are we closing. So that's where we strive to, okay, well, how do we actually track this? So we started with first tracking engagement. And this, we, as Ali mentioned, we had pretty large growth over the last few years. So we started with, okay, well, we need to track engagement. Okay, we need to at least know, okay, are people clicking, or what's our click-through open rate? That's, okay, so we got that down. We were able to track downloads and subscribers, great. But we still didn't have, how is this contributing to revenue? So the next, we started to say, okay, well, this engagement is bringing in leads. Okay, so as a quick side note, when I talk about leads and MQLs, for us, that's not a content download. A lead for us, an MQL for us, represents a potential opportunity. It means a potential new revenue coming in the door for us. And for us, it means someone has raised their hand and generally said, hey, I would like to buy this, or I'm interested in this. It's a very active on the part of the person. So we basically, okay, we have these click-through rates, we have the open rates, and they're bringing in leads, and we had it as a last touch methodology. So what was the last thing the person did that before they became a lead, which is great and phenomenal, and everyone should all start in that progression. But we were still being accounted for. Okay, you brought in 500 leads, but how much revenue did that generate? How this email, you say it was important. You say, oh, thought leadership is sharing this, but did it actually impact anything? I'm actually oh, that's a good question. People that can fire me. So then, basically, you sought to connect our engagement to how much actually is touch is influencing, and how much can we attribute to each interaction a person is taking. And with that, we were able to tie not just to our leads, but through the funnel into revenue and closed business. So, what is multi-touch attribution? It's generally a better way that gives us more data for marketers to make better data-driven decisions. Yes, it's about giving proof to show our value, but at the end of the day, yes, we want to make sure that we're proving our value to our stakeholders, but we also need to understand that it's a way that we can make better data-driven decisions from it. So from a last touch, I wanted to kind of explain the difference between last touch and multi-touch. So let's say a director wins an Oscar. I think that's a director can win an Oscar. In a last touch methodology, the director would get 100% of it. He made the film, he directed it, he gets the complete award. In a multi-touch kind of model, you would say, yeah, the director was important. He probably gets the most credit, but you know what? He went to film school, so I mean, they should get part of it. And you know what? His mom was the one that raised him to be a competent human being. She should get credit, right? So that's kind of the thinking between like last touch and multi-touch. It just gives a fuller picture of who all throughout the whole journey of creating this film actually influenced the creation and the art of it. So then a little bit more practically, let's say this is someone's journey to become a lead. Okay, they read our email newsletter, they downloaded a piece of content, but neither of the things had enough oomph or to make them fill out a form or whatever to become a lead. But then they finally clicked a PPC ad and converted right after that. So that PPC ad would get 100% of the credit. Great, that's awesome. However, what you're missing is that they interacted with an email newsletter. They interacted with a piece of content. But in a last touch, you're not necessarily seeing that value carry through. You can see that through engagement, sure, but you're not connecting that engagement to your revenue. So in a multi-touch standpoint, the email newsletter will get a certain percentage. The content download would get a certain percentage. And the PPC, for us, would still get a very large percentage as well.
And from the content perspective, I start to get very excited about this because we know as content marketers, there are so many different ways that we're touching that prospect all along the way that are warming them up and nurturing them and all those wonderful blog posts we're writing and the newsletters and all those different pieces. But if you can't show it and prove it, it's like it never happened. And so in the old model, which was still a good very first step for us, we were able to say, okay, at least we can give credit to whatever the last piece of content was. But often that last touch is not a piece of thought leadership. It's something more product focused because they were ready to go. So, and in this new model now, we're able to kind of prove what I think we've known all along, which is all of that warming and nurturing and the value that we're providing throughout that whole funnel until they're ready to convert. It actually is making a real difference. It's very exciting.